Hey Cindy, I'm going to make you a co-host just momentarily until Annie gets out of her session and comes in. That way we know the room's rolling.
Okay.
Because it's otherwise, as soon as I leave, it shuts it back down. So that way we know it'll stay open and people can get in.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the literacy breakout. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting another minute or two, and we'll go ahead
Uh,
with our um,
do let's do 8 a.m.
literacy breakout here in a moment. All right, I'm showing that it is 11:10 on my side. So welcome everybody for joining us here at our literacy breakout session. We always have such a good conversation around all things literacy in our great state of Tennessee. Never a dull moment, I feel like. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Annie Ansana. I am the Director of Clinical Practice and Assistant Professor of Education at Belmont University. And I always enjoy the session to co-host alongside of Lori Farley, and I believe she's going to be joining us here shortly. And so we'll go ahead and get started. But this session is really a session for you all. We navigate a lot in the ed prep space around literacy, but literacy also obviously directly affects our schools and our teachers. And so, so many great resources, so many great initiatives going on right now. I've developed some questions to help us lead our conversation today, but wanted to give you a little context and also open the floor to anybody who has any burning questions that they might want us to get started with today too. Welcome, Lori. I just saw your face pop up there. My co-host and partner in all the literacy things today. Welcome.
Yes, sorry for being tardy. I was having trouble getting in. But now I'm here.
No worries. Glad you're here. Before we jump right in, we had a lovely conversation for those of you who were part of our Talacti meeting this morning. And we had some wonderful folks from Carson Newman share a little bit about the IC tool from Cedar that has been supporting with their literacy review, which is now an annual review required for all EPPs. And so I know there are other institutions too. I think it was 10 of them. Is that right, Lori, that participated in getting the grant from Cedar to be able to use that tool
That
as
is
well?
correct. We
So,
had We had 7 that got the grant because Cedar offered a grant, and then we had some other Cedar participants who voluntarily joined in as well. So we're grateful for the cohort that we have in that pilot.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. And I'm sure some of those folks are represented here during our session today. So we'll love to pull out some great information and ways that you've been utilizing that tool, not only for the literacy review, but just for best practice as it relates to your day-to-day functions at your institution. So I'd love to open up the floor. If there are any questions you all want to get started with right off the bat, I'm anticipating that there may be some questions related to the literacy review and resources and ways that we can collaborate and think across that review that's coming up and due at the end of April as well. I know that the department has put together a lot of great resources, including the recorded webinar and the various different open office hours to attend to support with that too. So I imagine the literacy review will be on top of mind, but also there are other great things happening at your institutions. I know that our Tennessee Literacy Conference just took place as well. So many great things happening. So before we jump in with any questions to help facilitate, is there anything that anybody would like to celebrate or share or ask specifically as we get our breakout session underway? Y'all are doing some great stuff. We'd love to hear from you. Right, that's all right. It's right before lunch too, right? So maybe we're a little need some questions to help us get going. So
Hey, Annie, do you care if I'll pop in here too?
yeah, go ahead, Lori.
Something too, you may have seen recently in the EPP newsletter update, we had shared some literacy work that LMU had done over the holidays. And so if you're ever doing any work, it doesn't have to be like directly with kids, but if you're doing something that you feel like, hey, we're really proud of this work, shoot it my way. That's what Cheska did. We were in a call earlier in December, and she had talked about it, and I was like, oh my goodness, please send me, information when you're through with this. And so we love to see the great things occurring. And if there's anything that you would like to share with me, feel free to send that along.
Great. We always like to celebrate those that are doing such great work across our state. So thank you for that reminder. Okay, I'm going to put our first question in the chat too. And Lori and I spoke over email about some of these questions to help get our brains thinking about all things literacy. And so with the guidance provided from the Department of Education, we know that the literacy review is underway. And so I just want to open the floor and see how is it going for your faculty, right? What are some of the steps that you're putting in place to collaborate? We know that literacy standards, they are robust in our state. And so it's not just those that teach in literacy courses that are necessarily the only ones involved with our literacy review. We've got a lot of wonderful ways in which literacy is stranded across our preparation program. So how are things going with your faculty? What are some of the challenges you might be facing? What may be helpful that you're taking part in with that collaboration with your faculty that maybe help to share with the broader group as you all are working through this process? So I'll open it up there and would love a brave soul to share a little bit about how it's going for you all.
Well, I'll take the plunge. We are just starting. And so that's where we are. We are trying to go back and evaluate everything we've done in the past, review where we are, look and see where there may be gaps, and adapting things or adjusting things more than adapting things to make it where we are meeting all of those at a high level and maybe changing some of our assessments to make them more rigorous.
Thanks, Cindy, for kicking us off. We're in a similar place at Belmont too, just getting the process started. And I think the beauty of going through this now a second time and gearing up for the third time is there are more refinements, right? There's a lot of work that was put in the earlier years to ensure, you know, adherence to the standards, and now it's really just those refinements. Anybody else like to share? How's it going with your literacy review process, and what are maybe any challenges you're running into?
This, if you've been with on me before, you've probably seen this is my first time doing this. I'm fresh out of the K2 world into higher ed, and so this is my first time with the lit review. So I'm kind of drawing off of like everybody's conversations, all the things that they're saying, all the tips, all the things like that. I have some wonderful people in my office who are helping me helping me and guiding me through this. So we're kind of in the position they are. They're kind of just like starting with this, and so it's kind of an extra process this year with like teaching me how to do all the things. But it's kind of neat to see the inner workings behind all of this stuff.
Wonderful, Allison. Allison, what EPP are you at?
I'm at Bethel
Oh,
University.
wonderful. Yeah. Well, welcome to the group. This is a very collaborative, supportive group, and we all go through things together. So, yes, you'll likely have a good front loading this year, and then you'll be an expert by the time next year rolls around.
And Allison, I wanted to add in, you're not alone. Each year there's someone taking on the final or spearheading the work. So you're not alone in that, but you're doing the right things by leaning into your faculty, and that's really hopefully where the process is heading to in many of the EPPs, where it's many coming to the table and talking about it versus just one person feeling responsible for it all.
Anybody else want to share? Do we have any friends from Carson Newman or from the pilot that have interacted with the IC and want to talk a little bit about that process specifically? Because I know that process is going to be.
Annie, you muted yourself.
Sorry, Rachel is having a hard time getting in, so we're trying to trying to facilitate and troubleshoot technical issues too. So, anybody from Carson Newman or any of our institutions that are doing that pilot with our Cedar IC for literacy like to share a little bit about their processes? I know that we spoke about at the TLACTI meeting this morning, and this could be a really great resource too that's provided through Cedar. That is just a wonderful opportunity to think about the literacy review and use those tools more supportively through that process. So anybody from the pilot like to share?
Hey, Annie, this is Sandra Austin. I'm from Carson Newman, and I will say that at first we were afraid that the Cedar work might be in addition to, what we were already doing, but it really helped us streamline even more because being able to connect every assignment or our major assignments to standards, we're like, oh yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do, and it was good for us to review that, looking at some of the gaps that we did find. And then just those conversations of thinking about, okay, how are we going to build? Because that was one of the things that we noticed. We were covering everything, but it seemed like it was a lot of top heavy, like everything was happening in the upper levels. And we really needed to start building better foundations with the foundations classes and the earlier classes that the kids took. So just I think just being able to really look more in depth at our own program, and that process has been very helpful for us. And it wasn't a lot more work. It was what we were already doing, just put into a new template.
New system. Yeah,
Mhm.
Sandra, I want to thank you for that. I want to ask you a question in a moment too about some of that front loading process, when
Okay.
you're sitting down and really doing the heavier lift at the beginning, that now that it's in place is showing some of those gaps and areas to refine and so forth. So I want to ask you about that in a moment. But we do have some institutions that are not part of TLACTI or maybe want some more information about the Cedar IC tool. Would you mind sharing first a little bit about what that tool is and what it entails? And I know one thing too, if Carson Newman is open to it too, that lovely presentation with some of those slides that was shared this morning might be a great resource to share to the literacy breakout as well. Sandra, do you feel comfortable sharing a little more about it?
I'm happy to. I do not have access to those slides. Some of my compatriots put that up, put that together, and I was not able to help them with that. But the framework, the system itself is pretty easy to manipulate and access. I think one of the things that it helped us with is that we had to say, okay, what type of assignment is this? If it is just a reading, just a lecture, or if the kids are actually doing, so more modeling. And I think that helped us also realize if we were using different methods of teaching, so again, that more in-depth look at ourselves. And then we were able to bounce ideas off of each other. Oh, well, what if you do this? I use this, but you could use it, those kinds of conversations were extremely helpful for us. But the process itself is not difficult at all. We go through each one, each of the standards. How are we addressing it? How are we teaching it? All of those kinds of just the thought process about how we got into it. So it's not difficult. There were a couple of little glitches that I know Cedar is working on, which is to be expected. That's why we're the pilot, and hopefully they'll all be worked out before everybody else has to use it or gets to use it. So, anything else, Annie? I don't know.
Yeah, that's really helpful. What I remember
Oh,
from
I
this,
can't hear you. Hang on just a
oh,
minute. I'm
can
gonna
you
have
all
to
can you all
plug
hear me?
myself back in.
Okay.
I can hear you. I think Sandra's got to get
Okay.
her
Her
earbud
headphone.
in.
I've been having computer issues, so I'm freaked out when all of a sudden like you can't hear me and then I can't hear you all. So I'm very sensitive to that right now. What I understand too from Carson Newman is you all have a number of programs that require alignment to the EPP literacy standards, but you all also chose to focus in on elementary education first and look at the undergraduate students and then be able to build out that program specifically, which was then a good sort of template to then use for the other pathways that you offer in elementary education and special education, which I think is a really great process to take part in. And what I also understand is, as Sandra was describing some of the activities that take place too, that you identify and check as part of that tool, there's also an opportunity to look at levels of understanding and coverage of those standards, which I appreciated and didn't realize was a feature of the tool until I heard about it this morning, but that the level 0 is indicating that there's virtually no standards coverage and that those levels up to level 1, 2, and 3 can indicate, coverage of that particular standard, maybe by, assessing the standard and, introducing, reinforcing it. And then up to a level 3 is able to provide the field experience component that goes alongside of that. So really some wonderful features within that tool to help not only with alignment, but depth of that coverage of standards in various different ways to continuously be able to refine and identify where those gaps are and then support that too. Do I have that right in terms of how the system's working?
Yeah, there is a document that says a level 0 means this, a 1 is this, a 2 is this. And, not every class has a practicum, so not every class is going to ever get that 3. we're looking at doing maybe some virtual classroom experience. So kids watching videos that might improve some of those to go from a 2 to a 3, but not every class does that. So, and that's going to be okay. It's just a way to monitor that we have enough, that our kids are getting enough experiences, and a variety.
Annie, this is Missy Johnson is doing it. I'm actually driving back. That's why my camera's not on. But I will say I think that the connection with the high leverage practices is also an important part of that. And for each activity, they ask you questions about peer feedback and specifically the strategies that you're using. So that report that it generates, I mean, the conversations are just endless about when you start just looking at the data. I mean, I think it's a great tool, and I'm really excited for other people to get to see it.
Great. Thank you so much, Missy. I know this morning I asked Lori too, for those, this is a great pilot and lots to learn from. And I know that all of those institutions participating, as well as the Department of Education, is going to be looking at some of the outcomes, especially as institutions are using this tool as a part of the literacy review requirements too. So one of the questions I asked this morning was, this tool sounds great. What if we're not necessarily involved with CEDAR, or we are connected with CEDAR, but we have not been, regularly using this IC tool for for literacy? And so, Lori, I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you did this morning, because I thought it was really helpful, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm happy to, and I'm glad that you asked me to pipe in here first. Sandra, Missy, thank you for your feedback on that. It's exciting. That's what I keep saying every time I talk to Meg at CEDAR. Like, this just feels so exciting. So I want to start with some background. When I first came into this role and I did some work with CEDAR, I noticed that they had these innovation configurations. And I also noticed that some states had worked with them to create one that was specific to them. So some of you on this call may already be a part of CEDAR, and you've used their innovation configurations for high leverage practices in different areas. So that really led to me thinking, could we do this for Tennessee? Could Tennessee have a specific one? Now, Meg, who is our main contact at CEDAR for the IC work in this pilot, constantly reminds us how robust the Tennessee specific IC is. And there's a reason for that, which is because some states just have domains or competencies. Tennessee has a long list of standards that truly feel like high leverage practices are already embedded within those. So when we talked about developing this IC, we considered what could it look like if we just held the standards that are typically part of a review, but the consensus really came in feeling like Meg felt like that would really not give a whole picture to EPPs. And you hear Sandra and Missy talk about that. So the EPP is embedded with high leverage practices, but it also, and I'm sure anyone involved in this can tell you, it is directly aligned to all of our EPP standards. So it's really causing that opportunity to not only focus in on those standards that are typically part of the review, but also taking a look at those other standards that we're required by law to teach, but that sometimes get overlooked because they're not prioritized on that literacy review. So some things that we're considering with this, and we're so grateful for the 10 EPPs who are piloting this with us, is that this process has really given targeted support for EPPs to look at how that IC can strengthen the practices. Now, part of their gift of being part of this pilot was that any reports that we can use, we'd use those for the literacy review, because we already knew they were taking on a heavy lift doing this. And like Sandra said in the beginning, I felt like it was pretty overwhelming for us all in trying to wrap our head around it. And so we knew that would be a part of the process. And we really wanted these EPPs to feel like, hey, we're doing this and we will get to use this as part of our literacy review. And so the hope is with an IC, we're looking at soon they will have to turn in their reports and their reflections. And those of you who are part of that pilot, I will tell you that information is coming very soon as it is approved. We want to really talk with our pilot team, like, could this be scaled and can we sustain this use? And then really looking at how can it enhance or even support the literacy process. And one thing that our literacy review process, one thing that Meg Cameron from Cedar always grounds us back to, the IC was not created to be a review tool. It is created for EPPs to do exactly what Missy and Sandra are talking about, to have an opportunity to look to see, like, where are we having gaps in implementation? Where are we having redundancies in implementation, where maybe, we're over teaching something, where we could pull back and layer in more of the standards? And where can we say, look at us, look how strong we're doing in these areas? So it's really designed to be that reflective tool for EPPs. It's designed to be exactly what Missy and Sandra said. It's the conversations are the best part of it, and then the outcomes. So there's several reports that come with this work, and I think those have been incredibly valuable to the EPPs in mind. So we really will be looking at their reflections. We'll be talking with our pilot and with Cedar and looking at ways that, yes, this IC tool is intended for EPP reflection, but are there parts of it that, while EPPs are doing the work for this, that could also be used for the literacy review? So if they're already doing the work, how could that look? And I will say that is to be determined. We've got to wrap up this process. We've got to continue to collaborate with Cedar and to see what next steps will be. But I think ultimately, regardless of where it lands, it's an incredible tool that will support that strong literacy instruction and implementation, which will then lead to strong literacy review outcomes. I probably forgot something on there. And if I did, Annie, feel free to follow back up. And in Missy, Sandra, I think Etta, you're on here too. If you guys want to continue to add to that lens, just know decisions have not been made on how it's being used next year, but we're definitely discussing what it could look like.
That's really helpful history and context, Lori, around that. And, we always like to try things out to see how they're working first. But I really like the idea of the tool being not only potentially helpful for the literacy review, but helpful for the day-to-day implementation of the literacy standards within programs, which sounds like we're going to get some really good data and reflections after the next couple months. So we look forward to seeing some additional guidance from you all as well. Roberto asked a really good question in the chat. And again, everybody on the call sort of represents somewhere on the spectrum of, I've been doing literacy work for a very long time here in Tennessee, and then some are brand new to this process. So if you're brand new, welcome. Just to add on a little bit of that context I've put in the chat too, it was really back in about 2016 to 2017 is when the state board passed first set of very, very robust literacy standards that specifically for ed prep. And so there was already a great foundation of standards in place that EPPs were required to align to. Now, the specific focus of the annual review that's now been in place, this is the third year, is focused in on the foundational literacy skills, the characteristics of dyslexia, high quality instructional materials, and trauma-informed instruction as being the focus of what the Tennessee Literacy Success Act also requires. So that's the more intentional focus in terms of that review. But of course, this is an opportunity to look at all standards across all applicable programs too, just an opportunity to do that annually. So well, thank you for that. So would anybody like to share that's maybe not part of the pilot, how they are, what approaches they are taking to ensure that their annual literacy review requirements are being met? I know here at Belmont, Rachel's sitting in my office right now. It's a very collaborative process in which the two of us essentially spearhead to work with all of the faculty that teach across our elementary. We have integrated early childhood. We have a phasing out early childhood program. We have an elementary program, a special education program, and also instructional leader program with various different pathways, student teaching, and internship and job embedded, and then both undergrad and grad. So it is pretty comprehensive at our institution as well. So a process that we typically start is collaborating amongst ourselves that have courses that have the most amount of standards specifically, but then a very collaborative approach across faculty that starts in our faculty meetings, and then the communication process on, what's been currently in place, what data and evidence have we gathered from the previous year, what refinements do we need to make, not only to demonstrate that in the review, but to really lean into program coherence, because any effect that we make in, say, literacy methods courses, we also want to consider that in some of our earlier core classes as well. And then also think about implications as our students get into their final semester with student teaching. So it really necessitates many people on board to be able to look at things critically. And we do that through several touch points across the semester, starting in faculty meetings. So that's a little bit of what it looks like at Belmont. Would anybody else like to share what their processes look like and any successes and challenges they've been running into as we take part in this process?
I'll go. I think one of our saving graces is that this whole process started about the same time that we were starting our CAPE cycle of data collection. And so part of that whole process was making sure all of our syllabi have a chart on them with how the class meets various required standards. And so putting literacy in there as one of the standard sets, the Tennessee literacy standards, was super helpful for us as a starting point, because then we can compile all of that into one really long Excel spreadsheet. and so I just think that was a super helpful beginner. And then last year's review process also kind of put in the forefront of our literacy team's mind that our faculty did not understand what was truly meant by these standards and what was truly meant by foundational literacy standards. So Yvette Stewart and I created a PD for our faculty that all of them had to go through, and I think that was super helpful. I'm really excited to see the changes that were made over the course of this school year due to that. But we were definitely, I don't know who it was that said that they were finding that it was very heavy and just the literacy, like for us, it was really heavy in our literacy classes, and that was it. And it was like, guys, come on. Can't just be these 2 classes these people take. Like, it's got to be full program. So, just each year we're ever growing, but Yvette couldn't be here. Otherwise she would be able to tell you how she is deep in this process and has been for about a month now, I think. So
I want to hop in and say Stephanie and Yvette have done some great work at UTC, and Yvette presented at our last ELN EPP session, and that virtual session is up. I'll drop into the link just our main EPP ELA resource page for Best for All Central. If you weren't able to attend that, you can go back and see a snapshot. It wasn't as long as the presentation you guys gave at TACTI, which was wonderful, TACTI in the fall. But if anyone's kind of curious to know a little bit more about what Stephanie and Yvette are working on, I'll drop that link in the chat for you to find it, because they're doing some great things.
I'll also put my email address in here. I can connect you with Yvette, and if you just want to talk more about what we're doing with the PD, how that came about, we're happy to share the wealth. We're actually looking at creating some online versions, so anybody can use them. So
That's great, Stephanie. Thanks so much for sharing. I think PD is such a great way to explain sort of the robustness and intensity of the various different, standards across your whole program. So I think sometimes we just say literacy and then we're like checked out. Well, I teach a math class, or I teach classroom management. It's like, well, hold up, like look at what these standards really entail. What are some of those connections that are naturally already there with how you're tying that to activities for your students and so forth. So wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, we actually had a lot of kickback from our math and science folks until we had this discussion of, do you teach them new vocabulary? Well, yeah. Do you teach them how to enunciate that word? Well, of course. Well, there you go. You just did phonemes and you just also taught vocabulary. There you two basic functions in, and they were just like, wait, what? So it is like a lot of them just think I'm a math teacher, I'm a science teacher. We're all literacy teachers. So we had to educate.
It's great. It's great. One challenge, I want to put it out there too, because we're currently negotiating it at Belmont too, is, when we've had several iterations of the EPP literacy standards since 2016, right? And our EPPs have been so patient navigating through all of those changes and understanding why, right? It's really made I think our programming meeting what is required to ensure that our teachers are well prepared to support our students. However, sometimes changes come and they're not huge, right? But they're refinements, right? So in 2025, the state board passed some changes to the literacy standards, specifically around, they were minor, but around characteristics of dyslexia. So as we think about the standards evolving, and this process is really helpful in highlighting those. But when the changes are sort of made out of your regular sequence of meeting with your faculty and making some of those programmatic changes, I wonder how do you all stay aware of what those changes are? How do you make sort of on the spot adjustments to ensure that those standards are being met? What does that look like for you all?
So I can't really speak for all of our literacy folks. But I think one of the things that we try to do is making sure that everybody is aware of the change, right? But if we're being honest, what happens is that first iteration, right after the change is made, it's kind of done in-house in the courses that standard would typically be addressed in, right? So the faculty member, the faculty lead is the one making those changes. They probably wouldn't like me saying this, but I think this review process helps make sure that we're actually implementing it well, right? So this yearly cycle that we go through where we have to align is what is helping ensure that it occurs. We trust our faculty to implement it in the moment, right? Once they're aware, but then this is kind of our fidelity check, I think, and to make sure it cuts across all of the courses that it might need to be embedded in.
That's great, Robin. Thank you for highlighting that. It does. It makes you continuously pay attention, which we should all be doing anyway. But it is a challenge sometimes with staying on top of all those changes. So informing those is definitely step one. So the awareness and informing is definitely a great bit of advice to follow. What else? I know at Belmont, and because she's in my office with me right now too, especially with the major changes or the minor changes that happen now with characteristics of dyslexia within the standards, we really lean into our partnerships with our districts specifically to support and have some wonderful folks come in and be able to support with some of that. Did you want to talk about that, Rachel, like our dyslexia
Sure.
friend? Yes.
I will come and stand in the. Hi, everybody. Yes, so the coordinator for dyslexia services and intervention in Metro Nashville Public Schools, luckily is a friend of mine, but she has come into my classes for the past few years but has expanded it. And she talks about, the legal piece to it. Then she talks about the science. She looks at assessment as well as, she really touches on those screeners that we're required to use, and just instructional practices. And Dr. Melissa Brock is her name, and she was also gracious enough to record this for our asynchronous graduate courses. And it is it's so powerful because the students are hearing from someone who lives this every day, and she goes out and she is using materials and professional development resources that she's using with her teachers in the building. So we know they're getting the latest information. In fact, she said it was great because she had to update her presentations with new pieces of legislation and research that have come out. So she said it was really good because she said, oh, now I can use this at the district level. So we know we are getting the most up-to-date information. And then she's been great. She comes multiple times to my class. And so the students have time to reflect and react and then have discussions with her around it. So I think the more we can tap into our LEAs, the better off we're all going to be. Plus, they have such experience, and I just think, I think we should do it. And also it helps them see that we recognize their expertise. So I'm going to get off my knees now. Thank you, Rachel. It's really helpful.
Any other thoughts on just staying apprised of changes to the literacy standards and how that has impacted, or how you've thought about approaching that with your colleagues? One other thing I do, just thinking about Robin's suggestion too, is I put all of the state board voting meetings on my calendar. So even if I can't watch them live, because we actually have one going on right now, we can always come back to the recorded sessions and knowing that things are coming up on the agenda, whether it be first read or final read. That way we know something's likely coming. And so we can prepare a little bit better in advance to know what adjustments and when. Another challenge, obviously, that you all are likely contending with too is much of our faculty are on 10-month contracts, right? They're not working in the summer, they have spring breaks off and so forth. So just navigating those timelines and figuring out how to get individuals to get the work done that's needed, but also within their contract as well. So something that we all deal with. Good. All right. Well, what other questions do you all have? Those were the facilitated questions. I know that were likely at top of mind. What else? We've got some good questions in the chat too, especially with some of our folks that are navigating the standards that are new to this process too. And so the guidance that the department provides is really strong because it identifies which programs are required to be in alignment to the standards. So all that's really helpful. And then looking at various different program pathways too. If you offer an undergrad or a post-bac program, those are all required to be within the review process too. So that guidance is really helpful. And then the office hours that they provide are great places to be able to ask your specific questions about your EPP. Lori, anything else that you'd like to add or ask?
Well, I was actually about to paste just for easy access all the documents in, but apparently I'm over a literacy or number count with this. I was trying to think of just some. When it comes to the literacy review, yes, definitely dig into those guidance documents. And I know you were just talking about the standards. As soon as we know standards are changing, we put those into the EPP newsletter. I know I said that a lot when I talked earlier, but if you're not making it a regular habit to look at that, I would encourage you to do so because there's so much information that we put in there to notify people with. And so, but I also know, like, I had a CAPE newsletter sitting in my email for a while that I didn't open up. So I get it. Sometimes those things happen, but I would encourage you just to stay on top of that. We always try to put literacy opportunities within it. Um, one thing that we did change this year, the feedback is great. We get feedback from you guys. We learn things through every process. I said this in the meeting with Talacti this morning. And some of you who've been working with me from the beginning, I always said with our literacy review, there were 3 tenets I really wanted to stay focused on, and that was to make it, an effective process, an efficient process, because we have a lot to do, but a worthwhile process as well. And I know that I hear a lot, when I heard Annie talking about her and Rachel, they really collaborate on this work. I know sometimes it does fall to one person, but it really is better suited when you're having those collaboration and conversations with others. And that's something that's in the guidance document as well. We put in some guiding questions that may be helpful to use with your faculty. They're not all encompassing, but they are a starting point. And so, I know feedback, I always say feedback is love, even though sometimes feedback is hard too, but it does help us to know what kind of changes and refinements need to be made in the process, because that is always going to be something that we're striving towards, is that efficiency, effectiveness, and the worthwhile nature of the work. Because yes, it's a policy that we have to do, but if it's something we have to do, let's make it something that we can learn from. So in just a second, I will repost those links into the chat. Also, I just wanted to highlight for those who weren't in Talacti this morning also is that I am just so pleased with all the opportunities that the department is offering for EPPs to collaborate with districts within the work that is being shared throughout the state. So like I said in my presentation earlier today, the Acceleration for All is such a great initiative with the state, and really looking at ensuring all of our students have access to Tier 1 materials. And you will learn, if anyone has had a chance to go to those, you're going to learn a lot about how districts are really bringing all stakeholders to the table, and not just saying, oh, this is a general ed. No, it's general ed, it's special ed, it's English language learners, it's everyone to the table, ensuring that access is being given to our students, and that they're looking at cohesive literacy practices within the work. The Early Literacy Network, they are great as well with the work that they're doing. And I will say, in looking at supports and resources, both of those literacy networks have modules that are attached to those. You may have seen those come out several times in the EPP newsletter. They have teacher modules and leader modules. So those leader modules are great for all instructional leader programs. And they could be something that you incorporate for your candidates, but I also think they're great refreshers. So, and all the time free that you have, if you get a chance to participate in one of those modules, you're going to get a certificate. So that could go towards keeping your license new. And then also, they embed so many resources that could be great for you to use within your coursework as well. So I just want to always elevate those opportunities to come together with districts. Even if you're not able to go, the virtual sessions are great, or rewatch a virtual session. And I would just encourage you to, even if you could just send somebody every now and again. I can't even attend all the in-person, so I get it. A lot of times I have to do the virtual, but I do think those are great opportunities. And I can tell you from the department side, we're constantly looking at ways to better support you and your work when it comes to the EPP literacy standards. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pause, and I'm going to put this information in the chat. And then if anybody has used any of those modules or attended any of those sessions and want to speak to some of the work that has been inspired from being a part of that, or how that's been helpful, that would be wonderful to hear.
That's really helpful, Lori. Thank you. One thing that I did last time we were sort of co-hosting this literacy breakout session in our conference in the fall is I took all of your resources that you linked and put it all on a one pager. And we can make that accessible because after this conference, everything from every session is going to become accessible to all participants. And then Carson Newman was so gracious in sending over the PowerPoint from the Talacti meeting this morning just now to my email. I appreciate that. That's something else I can add into our one pager. And that way you have everything together. I think Lori said this morning too, but sometimes you go to our wonderful resource, Best for All Central, but just get lost. So sometimes identifying all those things specific to literacy and the things that we've had discussion about today could be helpful. So I'm happy to consolidate everything together on that one pager, and that will be a great resource that y'all could have access to at the end of our conference today. All right, y'all. Well, we don't want to keep you. You've got like 2 minutes left of our session, so use that. Our next portion of our conference today is going to be lunch, and that'll be from 12 to 1. And then Robin, I believe we're coming back at 1 for the business meeting. Can you confirm that so I'm not saying the wrong thing?
That is correct. We'll see you at 1 o'clock back in the main meeting room.
Thank you all. Thank you for your participation. Lori, thank you for all the wonderful resources and supports. We appreciate you and your partnership. Y'all, we will see you back at 1 in the main room. Thank you.